Supposed to be afraid of, who we are supposed to hate. You ask him a legitimate question about an important issue like, can we keep the lights on this winter? Or how do we fix child protective services? Or what are we going to do about our system of public education? And he's going to say, look out for those immigrants over there, those transgender kids on this side. CRT in our own history in this state. In his Texas, it's you or me. But in our Texas, it is you and me, all of us together, fighting with, for, and by one another to get the job done. That's who we are. This is the way that we have chosen to meet this moment, right? Any number of ways that we could have responded or reacted to the challenges and attacks that we face right now. We could have succumbed to them, submitted to them, despaired and just given up altogether. Just said, you know what? I guess this is just the way it's going to be in Texas. This is our future, our fortune, and our fate. But look at you. 2 months today, 2 months to the day that will decide the outcome of this election. Today is September 8th. The decision will be made on the 8th of November. 2 months ahead of this, all of us, in the middle of the day on a Thursday, have chosen to come together. Unless, and I don't want to assume anything, this is just where you all gather every Thursday at noon. If you do, my apologies. But I think you've come together not for the candidate, not for a political party. You've come together for this state, for this country, at our defining moments of truth. And that makes me so damn proud, so hopeful, and so optimistic about what we are going to be able to do together. I know that in addition to being Republicans and Democrats and independents in this room, and all of us are welcomed here, right? We've got ranchers, we've got farmers, we've got people who literally grow and raise the food, the fuel, the fiber that we depend on. And you are getting hammered right now, hammered from above, because there's not been enough of that precipitation falling from the sky. Record droughts right here in Caldwell County, the likes of which we have not seen in the living lifetime of the folks here in this room. You're getting hit on inflation, your food, your fertilizer, your fuel, all of the inputs to what you raise and you grow, you're getting hammered. And then, for those who are raising livestock in this area, there are 3 corporations that control the market here in the state of Texas. They're hammering you on the margins that were already thin when you began. I know that you are not despairing at this moment. You want to make sure that you can continue, that you can pass this farm or ranch onto your kids, onto your grandkids. And you came here as an act of faith and hope, saying, I will not stand idly by and allow this to happen to me. I'm going to have a voice and a vote and a say in this next election. So we have a governor who literally shows up in rural Texas and has the backs of our farmers and our ranchers and men and women who produce what we depend on in this state. There are some among us here today who teach school or who have taught school, who served as the counselors and the librarians and the classroom educators, the school bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, the people who make public education in Texas possible. Now, some of your colleagues or those with whom you worked are in the classrooms right now. We understand that the school year has just begun, but let me acknowledge this. Though this is the toughest time to be in the hardest profession, you are doing everything that your community and these kids need from you now at this incredibly important moment in their lives. And you do it despite the fact that right here in Caldwell County, the school teacher on average is underpaid by $12,500 a year against the national average. Now, you are not $12,500 down from the highest paid teacher in America. You're $12,500 down just from average, just to get to par. Now, no wonder over the course of this summer and through the fall, you're working a second or a third job just to make ends meet, to meet the note on your mortgage, to put food on the table, to make sure there are the resources there, not just for yourself, but for your kids, and importantly, and I've heard you tell me this a million times, for those kids in the classroom. We just saw a report released recently that said, on average, the Texas teacher spends $800 out of her own or his own pocket to decorate that classroom, to provide the notebooks and pens for the kids who are either too poor or too forgetful to show up with them. But we know that the true figure is far higher than that, because when that kid who's on free and reduced breakfast and lunch, you know they don't have a warm meal to go home to at the end of the day, out of your own pocket, as underpaid as you are, you ensure that they have the calories, the fuel to burn, so they can do that homework that you've assigned to them. That child who shows up in the same dirty pair of jeans, probably the same dirty pair of chonis underneath, Monday through Friday, who's holding his head down a little bit in shame, doesn't have the money or the resources or the clothes or the style that his classmates have. You buy that kid a new set of clothes over the weekend, so on Monday morning, he's holding his head high. He knows that he has just as much value and worth as anyone else. I just want you to know that, number one, we are grateful for what you do day in and day out, and you need to hear it from us. Number two, we want to make sure that as you do your part, we do ours. And that means a few things. One, that we pay you enough so that you just work that one job, focusing on that child in front of you in the classroom, stoking their lifelong love of learning. Once we do that, there is no stopping her, the things that she will do, or any of us, right? We all benefit from what you all do in that classroom. I want to make sure that you have every ability to focus on your job. And here's something related to that you told me. Hey, Beto, when I have to take not hours, not days, weeks, months to prepare these kids for a high stakes, high pressure, standardized test that will never effectively measure their potential or the effort that I'm expending on their behalf, I'm taking away from the opportunity to allow them to reveal their genius and live and rise to their full potential. So listening to you, we are going to cancel the STAR test in the state of Texas. And we're going to have some help, because I'm going to name a classroom teacher as the next TEA commissioner in the state of Texas. We're going to get that done. And for those retired educators who are here with us, I hear you loud and clear. You have not received a cost of living adjustment in the last 18 years. Imagine every cost that has gone up since then, just over this last year, much less the last 17 years before this last year. Y además, and in addition, there's something called the WEP, the windfall elimination provision, that says that when you took that second and third job on and you paid into Social Security, just like every working American, you cannot draw back that earned benefit. We punish you for public service. Now, we've got a research department looking into why we ever passed a law like this. The best that we can surmise is that Texans were sick and tired of how filthy rich retired teachers were getting in this state, right? Living in those big mansions, burning $1,000 bills right in front of our eyes. We were sick of it. We were going to make sure that we punish those retired teachers. There's no good reason for what we are doing to those who gave the best years of their lives to all of us. So to the retired teachers out there, know this. We're going to make sure there's a cost of living adjustment every single year going forward, so you can afford to enjoy your retirement. You deserve it. And let me say this. We never talk about this stuff. And so it's hard for me to do this publicly. But there are many among us here who may struggle with mental health care challenges. And we did the research, and we cannot find evidence that there's a full-time psychiatrist in Caldwell County to serve anybody here among us. In fact, in Texas, we rank 51st in the nation behind every other state and the District of Columbia in the ability to see a mental health care provider. So in meetings just like these, folks just like you have stood up and said, you know what, Beto, my son, my sister, my parents, they will literally try to get arrested on purpose because they're untreated schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or clinical depression. They don't qualify for Medicaid in this state. They don't make enough to have private insurance. The county jail is the one place, however insufficient it might be and how immoral this is, that I get any kind of care that I need. Maybe a bed, a change of clothes, some supervision, maybe if I'm lucky, a prescription temporarily to some psychotropic medication, and that's it. Our county jails in this state are in fact the largest provider of mental health care services in this state. And ladies and gentlemen, we do not lack for resources, nor do we lack for wealth. This is a $2 trillion economy, the 9th largest on the planet today. We have the resources, and in fact, not only is this immoral what we're doing to one another, it's incredibly expensive. It costs us $120 a night to lock someone up. For a fraction of that, we can offer them consistent care with the provider. We can expand Medicaid and bring $10 billion into this state every single year going forward. Your federal income taxes coming back to Texas. Hire the psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and social workers that we need right here in Caldwell County, so that, this is the radical proposition here, all of us can be healthy enough and well enough to finish our education, to go to work, to raise our families, to start a small business and hire other people to do whatever you were placed on this planet to do in the first place. We just want to make sure that you're well enough to get it done. And lest you think this is some kind of democratic, super liberal plot to take over this state, this state came up with Medicaid in 1965. The first Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was very familiar with Lockhart, Texas, he just thought you shouldn't be too poor or too unfortunate to get the care that could literally save your life. And all four of our border states, 3 with Republican governors, have taken the deal on Medicaid expansion. $10 billion of your federal income taxes coming back every year. We could reopen some of the 16 hospitals in rural Texas that have closed down on Greg Abbott's watch. We could fix the problem that we have, where we are losing more children to diabetes than any other state in the union today. Imagine the good that we could do for one another. And it's not just good for those who are doing without today, it's good for all of us, because we'll all benefit from what they are able to do. Are you all with me on this one? Making sure that everyone's healthy enough, well enough to live to their full potential? So for those going without, you've given me hope that you're here today. You're meeting this darkness and these challenges with your faith, your optimism, your hope, and also your action. The only way that we're going to overcome this is by winning in November. The only way that we're going to win in November is through you. It will not be the candidate. It will not be the political party. It won't even be this dog that we hear barking at times as we are having this conversation. And just remember, every time this dog barks, we register a new voter in the state of Texas. That's the way that this works. So we are glad that this dog is here. You know, it's you showing up at the doors of those voters who are going to decide the outcome of this election. You know that no state is more voter suppressed, more voter intimidated than this one. This is the toughest in the union in which to cast a ballot or to register to vote. And it's not tough for everybody. Let me just say the quiet part out loud. Certain people are targeted for suppression and intimidation. 750 polling places, for example, have been closed in this state over the last 10 years. That's twice the number as the next closest state. And when you look at where those closures are, they're in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods across the state of Texas. On election day, I promise you, you are going to see images beamed from Houston, Texas, right outside one of our great historically black colleges, TSU, of voters waiting in a line 6 hours deep. And part of you is like, holy smokes, that's amazing that someone's going to wait 6 hours in order to vote. They're my hero. But that pride that you feel in that individual is quickly overwhelmed by the shame that you feel about this state, that we would subject anyone to that indignity. Imagine those working $7.25 an hour, working not one, but 2 or 3 of those jobs, who literally do not have the time to wait in a line 6 hours. People raising their kids, folks taking care of their parents, people who just say, you know what, the heck with that. I'm not going to be in this line for 6 hours in my own democracy. I want to be treated just as every other American is. So I want to tell you this. The only way we overcome this attack on our democracy is through more democracy. And democracy is this, and all of us going out there, meeting voters where they are. Some of us chose to come here today And I'm grateful for that. Others didn't know that this meeting was happening, could not take time off of work or away from their kids. We have got to go meet them where they are. The number one reason given by people who didn't vote in the last election is that no one asked them to vote in the last election. This next election, please know, they are waiting for us. They are anticipating your knock on their door. There are folks who are in yellow reflective vests around the room. They have a series of block walks or canvases already set up in Caldwell County. They will sign you up to join others in this community to go knock on those doors. And I promise you, we'll put you on the very doors of those who are the targets of suppression and intimidation. And won't it be something if on election night, the very people who are not supposed to participate in this election are the ones who provide the margin of victory when we win it, right? We're going to do it. All right. One thing that I want to make sure that I give all of us is the argument for why we need change. I talked about some of the challenges under which you're laboring today, some of the darkness that has descended on this state, but I want to give it to you by the numbers so that we can share with our family members. Our Republican mother-in-law, who voted for Abbott every single time he's been on the ballot, but does not like what's going on in this state, but wonders whether this is the time to change horses. So, by the numbers, it's exactly 14 days since Abbott's trigger law went into effect, completely banning abortion beginning at conception, with no exception for rape and no exception for incest. I have listened to so many women across the state who have described each individually, personally, painfully, privately, the nature of their pregnancies, whether it was ectopic or the fetus was no longer viable or there was some other complication. For every woman who has accessed an abortion, there is a unique individual story about why she chose to do that. And remember this, 50 years ago, abortion was just as illegal in the state of Texas as it is today. But 50 years ago, no one rode to the rescue of this state or the women within it. In fact, Jane Roe, Roe versus Wade, is one of our fellow Texans. Her two attorneys, Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, prevailed upon an all-male United States Supreme Court and won protection for the right to privacy to make these decisions without interference from the government. If Texas women won it 50 years ago, I bet you Texas women are going to win it back in 2022. It has been, to give you another number, it's been 15 weeks and 2 days. We count every single one of them. Since 19 children in Uvalde, Texas, and their 2 heroic school teachers were taken from all of us. Those kids defenseless against somebody who at the age of 18 could legally purchase not 1, but 2 AR-15s, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, the high-impact, high-velocity rounds hitting their bodies, destroying so much of who they physically were that their parents had to identify them by the shoes that they were wearing or the DNA swab that was taken from their body. Defenseless against that, and defenseless against a governor. Though despite the fact we've had 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history over the last 5 years, has done nothing to make it less likely that we won't see a 6th or a 7th. In fact, signed into law against the wishes and the pleading of police officers and sheriff's deputies, something known as permitless carry, that now allows any Texan, including violent felons, to carry guns on our streets without any kind of background check, any vetting, any training whatsoever, and none of us are the safer or the wiser for it. A governor who could call a special session to go after transgender children, a governor who could call a special session to go after school teachers and CRT, a governor who could call special session after special session to weaken the right to vote in this state over the last 15 weeks and 2 days, could not be bothered to follow the lead of those parents and families in Uvalde to call a special session and do the right thing. Listen, I have listened to everyone across the state, Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, rural, urban, alike. Here are the things we can agree on. This is what I put on the agenda in my special session. At a minimum, let us raise the age of purchase from 18 to 21 for an AR-15 or an AK-47. Let's ensure that we have a red flag law so that if you already have that firearm and are threatening to use it against somebody else, law enforcement can intervene before it is too late. And I have yet to meet the gun owner who will argue the point on this one. You do have a background check today at a federally licensed gun dealer, but if you buy from a private seller, there's no requirement to make sure that you're not going to be a danger to yourself or to anyone else in this community. Let's go for universal background checks in the state of Texas. There's an answer to this. We'll save more lives while defending the Second Amendment. We're Texans, we understand this. We will get it done. Another number for you, 18 months since the man in the highest position of power could not keep the power flowing to the people that he was supposed to serve. 18 months ago, as the temperature dropped in the state of Texas, we literally couldn't keep the lights on, the heat running, or the water flowing because it had frozen in your pipes, not for minutes or hours, but for days, and in some parts of this state, for weeks. 700 at least Texans lost their lives. An 11-year-old boy in Conroe, Texas, his mom could not pile enough blankets on his shivering body, and he froze to death in his home in the energy capital of the world. 75-year-old Vietnam-era veteran. This guy who willingly served this country in a war that America didn't understand, came home not to ticker tape parades or thank you for your service. At best, the indifference of his fellow Americans, but got after it, put his head down, raised his family, built up his community. That 75-year-old veteran died of hypothermia in his truck trying to charge his oxygen tank because the electricity was no longer on in his home. While that was happening, and your junior senator was at the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun, Mexico, and your governor was on Fox News blaming windmills, Greg Abbott ordered that the price of electricity be set at its highest allowable limit. That meant that gas soon began to trade in the state at 200 times the going rate. Utilities went into bankruptcy. Others took billions of dollars in debt on. His biggest campaign contributors made $11 billion in profit over the course of just 5 days last February. And to add insult to injury, he has yet to fix the grid or address the problem or make it any less likely that we'll be freezing in our homes this next February. And he's left you and me and every other ratepayer in this state holding the bag. On average, our utility bills have gone up $45 a month in Texas because of Greg Abbott. When you compound that with your rising telephone and internet bills because he vetoed the Universal Service Fund, or the $20 billion increase in property taxes since he took office, we now realize he's the single greatest driver of inflation in the state of Texas. There's an answer to that as well. We win this election, we weatherize the grid, we connect ERCOT with the national grid so we can draw down power when we need it. And we take those bastards who stole the $11 billion from us and get every penny back to the ratepayer in the state of Texas. The last number I'll leave you with, and then I'm looking forward to taking your questions, hearing what's on your mind, is 8 years. It's been almost 8 years since Greg Abbott was first sworn into the highest position of power and public trust in this state. I've mentioned the consequences of that in our public education system, in our grid, in the gun violence that we see in our communities, in the attacks that we find ourselves weathering, and some will succumb to against women, against the LGBTQ community, and against immigrants in the state of Texas. Now, because he has no record or accomplishments on which to run, no vision or strategy to offer us to look forward to, he's going to try to win this one on fear and on hatred. He's going to talk about the border more than he'll talk about anything else. You ask him about any legitimate issue, he's going to point to those Mexicans, the invasion that's coming to get us right now, the criminals, the rapists, the people that we are supposed to be afraid of. Now, I know present company understands that though we all came here in a different ship at a different time, today we're in the same boat. And that is the genius of this state and of this country. Whether your family first came here 15,000 years ago and you are indigenous to this land, Whether you were brought here against your will and forced to build the success and the wealth of this country, though you could take no part in it, and your descendants are struggling now to get their fair share, or like the O'Rourkes in the 19th century, you fled famine. To return to Ireland meant certain death, and so you came to the one place on the planet that would take you in. That is our story, and it continues today. Those making that 2,000-mile journey, literally the length of this continent, from some of the deadliest countries anywhere on earth today, are just part of this tradition that has made this country so great in the first place. And before any of us are tempted to succumb to the fear that he will try to stow, the vilification, the demonization of immigrants, think about them as our fellow human beings. Think about those who willingly climbed into the back of that trailer where they found in San Antonio with 53 dead human beings. What would cause you to get into the back of a hot trailer with no air conditioning in the middle of the summer in Texas? And now think about this, and I know it's hard to do for the parents and grandparents in the room. Once you're in that trailer, what would cause you to reach down and grab hold of your 11-year-old daughter's hand and lift her up into that trailer with you? You don't do it to come here and hurt people or steal someone's job or place in our society. You do it because you literally have no other choice. I've got an 11-year-old at home. The only reason I would do that is if I had no other option but to save that child's life through this action. Today, though, instead of a solution to this challenge, we have stunts. We have sending migrants on buses to D.C. or Chicago or New York. We have a governor who's proud of the 1.5 miles of wall that he built, more of a public art installation than a security device, if you ask me. The 10,000 involuntarily activated Guard members taken from their families, including right here in Lockhart, without a week's notice, to say goodbye to their kids, to their career, to their community, for a 1-year deployment. Ladies and gentlemen, 8 of those Guard members have lost their lives so far. 4 of them have taken their lives, 4 more died in questionable circumstances. Not a single one of them was taken from us by a single immigrant. So instead of these stunts, the vilification and the demonization, which, by the way, leads to things like the shooting in El Paso, which claimed 23 of my neighbors by someone armed with an AK-47, repeating this rhetoric used by the governor and the former president, saying that he came to El Paso, he came to kill because he was going to repel the Hispanic invasion of Texas. Instead of any of that, let us get back to solutions. And this is what I propose to you, because I've listened to you. If you want to come to this country, we want you to be here, but we want you to follow the law. And we want to make sure that on our part, we upgrade our laws so they reflect our values, our needs, our reality here on the ground. Ronald Reagan was the last administration under which we had a comprehensive rewrite of our immigration laws. So think about this. You want to come and pick onions in Brownsville, or fix fence in Merritt, or work in the slaughterhouse in the Panhandle. You want to come write code in Austin, Texas, start a business and hire people right here in Lockhart in this community. At every end of the economic spectrum, you want to come here to do better for yourself and your family, but in so doing, you want to do better for all of us. I just want to make sure there is a safe, legal, orderly path for you to be able to do that. You want to come here and join family? The wait list, if you're coming from Mexico, is 20 years long. Now, I don't condone or justify those who skip the line and try to enter in between ports of entry, but I certainly understand the motivation of someone who says, I'm not going to wait 20 years to see my family. I want to be with them right now. Let's make sure there's a safe, legal, orderly path for them as well. And those who want to claim asylum here, we are a country, by and large, of asylum seekers and refugees from the world over who have made America so successful, so strong, and yes, so safe. Let's make sure that you're not waiting 6 years, which is the current wait period to adjudicate your claim for asylum. Let's get that done in 6 weeks. And if you pass the bar, then welcome to America. We want you to be here. And if you don't, you've got to return to your country of origin, because we are a nation of laws. Those 3 ideas I've heard from Republicans, I've heard from Democrats, and they all agree that if we take care of those who want to work, join family, claim asylum, and remove them from the table, All that's left are those who might want to do us harm, those who traffic in illegal drugs like fentanyl or smuggle human beings. Right now, they're needles in a haystack. We address the haystack. We're going to be so much more successful at keeping this state safe and secure. We're going to lead on immigration because we understand it better than anyone else. You all with me on this? All right. As we turn to the question and answer portion of our program today, at this 2-month mark, this is a pretty historic day. It's also the 49th day of our 49-day push through the entire state of Texas. We made Lockhart the community in which we launched the very final push, these 60 days. We made Lockhart the community that culminates these 49 days of travel through the biggest and smallest communities in the state of Texas. I offer you this. I've talked about how hopeful it makes me to see you here, the way you have chosen to meet this moment and the challenges before us. So think about this going forward as you're knocking on those doors and sweating out there in this hot sun. Few generations are as fortunate or lucky as ours to have the chance to fight for everything that matters to all of us at this moment of truth. The stakes could not be any higher. In 1965, inspired by John Lewis, LBJ, the first Texas president, convenes a joint session of Congress, and he's looking at what Lewis did a week before in March of that year, trying to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, standing up for his own civil rights and the right to vote, and almost being beaten to death in the process. And LBJ in that speech to Congress says, as it was at Concord in 1776 and the Revolutionary War that secured our independence and began this democracy, as it was in Appomattox in 1865, so it is today in 1965. In other words, this generation he was talking about then is standing up and fighting for the most fundamental values that make us Americans. I tell you, here today, in 2022, in the state of Texas, where every right that we cherish, every freedom that makes us strong is under attack, unlike any other place in the country, we are in that same line of heroes who get to stand up and fight for what makes this country great. Remember that as you're knocking on those doors. And remember how you want to feel on the night of this election. And imagine how nice that cold beer tastes at the end of that block walking session out there in the sun. We get to do this. We get to win this one for Texas and America, and we're going to do it together. You all ready to win? I'm ready to do this with you, for you, and by you. Thank you, Lockhart, for coming out. Cynthia Cano in the yellow shirt's got the other microphone. And if you raise